Sony used to make the best true wireless ANC earbuds on the market, period. But now the WF-1000XM4s face stiff competition, but despite that fact, Sony have claimed that they've improved the entire earphones, including ANC. In this review, you're going to be seeing if the manufacturer's claims are actually worth it, and if they're actually worth the hype. And it should be considered that these are one of the most expensive true wireless earbuds on the market, coming in at a whopping £250 in the UK and $280 in the US. So jumping straight into it, we're going to talk about sound quality. Now here, it's really impressive that the manufacturer has integrated the LDAC codec, which was previously found only in their over-the-ear solutions. Here you've got LDAC, SBC and AAC, and thus Android users can really benefit from the higher quality Bluetooth codec and thus get the best audio quality. Now in my case, I do use an Android device and therefore was able to use the LDAC codec without any sort of problems on my Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus, and furthermore had no sort of latency issues and or lip sync delays. Now with that in mind, what about in terms of its overall sound quality? Well, here I feel it's drastically improved over its predecessor, not only due to the fact that the LDAC codec is now included, but also because the overall sound frequency is just a little bit more well-rounded. It's not as harshly V-shaped as it used to be, and furthermore the overall width and depth that you get from these earphones are now even more impressive. Comparing them to some other earphones out there on the market, from audiophile-grade earphones to even more budget or mid-tier earphones out there, I found that the Sony WF-1000XM4s definitely sounded alive and very lively. Take for example the sub-bass response. It delivers a nice hearty low end and one that does extend. While it can't quite compete with the likes of the Grado GT220s, I still think it's very good. The same could be said about its mid-bass response, very punchy and hearty, and in this respect I actually found myself to be quite excited when I was listening to, let's say, R&B or dance music. There is a touch bit of uncontrolled mid-bass slam, but it's very minimal, and quite frankly I was just really happy with what it was producing. Now as for the mids, they are slightly pushed back, but they're nowhere near as V-shaped as their predecessors. In comparison to other competitors out there on the market, I don't think it can compete with the likes of the Sennheiser True Wireless Momentum 2s, for example, but it is very much more, well, forward sounding the likes of the Oppo Enco X, or let's say the Libratone Track Air Plus. Here I found myself that the Sonys were just a little bit more impressive. Furthermore, you can actually go through the app, which I'll showcase a little bit soon, and here you can have a custom EQ, whereby I actually added a few notches to the mid-range EQ in order to bolster that performance. Now as for the highs, they extend really well. There's a nice sort of zing at the top end, and there's no sort of harshness or sibilance. Quite frankly, I was really impressed yet again. Now finally, in terms of its soundstage, I was left seriously impressed. Here I would say it's arguably one of its biggest strengths, and while its predecessors did well in this domain on the whole, I do think that in comparison to other true wireless earbuds that I've currently found, you can only look at the audiophile-grade, let's say Grado or Sennheiser earphones, in order to get this kind of wide and deep soundstage. Here it is not only great in terms of providing you a good airiness, but it also has fantastic instrument separation. Those kind of larger housing of the earphones aid in terms of providing a good breadth of music, and as such will just leave you just engaged, happy, and also make you feel that your music just sounds all that bit more alive. Now moving swiftly on, we get on to the recording quality, and here I was left again impressed, specifically in comparison to its predecessors, which really struggled in this domain. Here the XM4s do a great job in comparison to other true wireless earbuds that can be found on the market, and furthermore when it comes to a noisy environment, they do a decent job. Now just for comparison here, the Jabra Elite 75T, which I often use as a reference in my true wireless earbud reviews. Ultimately here, the Sonys can't quite compete in terms of the overall recording quality, nor when it comes to honing into your voice versus a very busy environment, but still the Sonys do a decent job, which hopefully you'll be able to hear for yourselves and agree with my opinion. Now so far it's living up to a pretty good billing for the XM4s, but now we get onto ANC performance, and here I was expecting to be blown away considering my experience of the XM3s, but that wasn't the case. In my real world test, when I took them out on commutes and went on bus journeys or train journeys, I was a bit surprised how I could actually hear the environment around me, and indeed that was with ANC enabled and the non-smart mode, just to make sure that it was just running permanently on its highest setting. And when I came and did my control test in comparison to the Libratone Track Air Plus, the Oppo Enco X, and even to a degree the Jabra Elite 75T, the Sony earphones didn't quite compete with the Oppo and Libratone earphones. In fact, the Libratone earphones made it seem that I was in a completely isolated room, whereas the XM4s made it seem that, well, I could still hear the environment around me. Now you might be saying, oh, you didn't have the right fit, and yes, I did run the earphone tip fit test just for the sake of you guys not flaming me in the comment section below, let alone me having reviewed over 400 audio related devices, but I can safely say that I had all the right fit, and I didn't have, well, the same sort of experience that I had with these other true wireless earbuds. Ultimately, what I'm trying to convey over here is the XM4's ANC performance is good. It is definitely better than flagship audiophile-grade earphones out there on the market, which have somewhat laughable ANC performance and or non-existent ANC performance. But in comparison to other earphones out there which don't sit in that audiophile grade territory and come in at pretty much half the price, you should consider that these other earphones provide better ANC performance at a much budget price, which isn't something I was expecting to say in this review. Now moving on, we get onto the design, and here I feel that Sony has drastically improved in comparison to its predecessors, whereby the XM4s now will fit a lot more smaller sized ears, and in my case, with large sized ears for a male, I feel that these earphones don't easily fall out. Now I won't quite recommend them for hardcore gym workouts, but for most people, I think for commuting and or if you're doing light jogs, you won't have any problems. Elsewhere, there's also foamy tips that are included inside the box. They're not quite in comparison to the Comply tips that you can find, but they will provide a little bit of increased comfort for those people who potentially might experience a little bit of discomfort over time, or potentially them falling out, whereby the foam tips will provide a little bit more extra friction within the ear canal. Now the earphones also have touch sensitive buttons on either side, and these can be customized through the app, which I'll showcase very shortly, and here I found that the actual touch responsiveness was actually really well done. It's not quite as impressive as the likes of, let's say, the Oppo Enco X or the Libratone Track Air Plus, but in comparison to most of its competitors, here I feel Sony should be commended. Now elsewhere, another very important factor is battery life, and here the XM4s last for around 8 hours with active noise cancellation enabled, and if you were to disable ANC, this can go up to 12 hours, which is very impressive. Of course, it will depend in terms of your usage and the overall playback volume. As for the case, it provides up to 32 hours, so therefore that will be plenty sufficient for a lot of individuals, and furthermore can accept a quick charge via its Type-C input, and thus can go from 0 to 100% in roughly 1.5 hours. Now moving on to the app, and here you can see the battery indicators of the earphones on either side and also the charging case, which is quite handy. Then you've got the adaptive sound control, which I referenced before, and if you tap on it, you've got a variety of different options for you to choose. In my case, I rather leave them disabled, but of course you can use it if you want it to adapt to where you are going. Now for the ANC performance, so here you can see there's a little icon, and you can enable the automatic wind noise reduction if that's something that's going to be bothering you, so for example if you're on a bicycle, and elsewhere you can switch between ambient sound, or you can disable it altogether, in other words not have ANC. In my case, and of course because they're ANC earphones, you'll probably want to enable it. Now text to chat is basically that you speak and it automatically picks up that you're chatting, and therefore will enable an ambient aware type of mode. This is quite useful for those people who might be frequenting, but in my case I actually prefer to be a little bit more civil and just take out the earbuds so that people can understand that I'm chatting to them. Now as for the EQ control that I referenced before, as you can see I've got it on a manual EQ, and you can see I've increased the treble vibe very slightly and decreased it 6.3 kHz and increased the 2.5 kHz. Of course this is very subjective, but this is in my case to get the best audio quality from the earphones. Now speaking about audio quality, you do have the Bluetooth connection quality. Now in my case I prioritize sound quality, and therefore enabled me to put on LDAC. Now the LDAC codec has to be enabled manually via the Bluetooth menu, but once you do that on the first instance via your, let's say, Android phone, then you won't have to do it ever again. Now there's DSSEE Extreme, it's quite hard to say. This is in order to prioritize or say improve the quality of lower quality playback, at least that's what I gather from Sony. In my case I didn't notice a drastic improvement or decrease in improvement, so therefore I just left it disabled because I didn't really need it to be running. Now moving on to the system tab, you can see over here you've got the voice assistant, which is not something I use, but some people of course will want to use it, be it from their mobile or Google Assistant or Amazon Alexa, which is nice to see both of them supported. As for the touch sensors, you can customize them to a certain degree, whereby you can actually customize what they actually do. However, in terms of customizing every single tap, that can't be done, at least not at the time of doing this review, and you can see my left and right are different. Now elsewhere, there is a few different settings I want to show. So for example, the ambient sound control, or the ANC, you can enable different options. They'll have to be 2 selected, so for example off and ambient, or 3. As for the earbud tips, optimal tips, this is that sort of test which shows that if they're in your ears properly, and therefore I was making that joke previously about them. They've got automatic power off and on, so if you want to have that when they are taken off. In my case, I'd rather leave them on, just also because of testing. And also you've got an automatic pause and play function, and also notifications and voice guidance being done in certain languages. And in my case, I actually enabled it, so for example when I'm enabling or disabling ANC, it gives me that sort of audio cue. Now elsewhere, I should mention that both the audio drivers are master drivers, and therefore they can be used in a mono format, so therefore you don't have to worry about having both of them in your ear at all times. You can use the left one independently from the right, and vice versa. And so this all brings me on to my verdict. Would I recommend the Sony earbuds? Well, on the whole, I think they're an improvement over their predecessors, whereby the call quality, sound quality, the LDAC codec inclusions are all bettered, and specifically when it comes to design and fit, I think they'll be far more accommodating for different sized ears. However, when it comes to ANC performance, the XM3 still reigns supreme for me, and there are some other alternatives out there on the market which offer superior ANC performance and or come in at a cheaper price. Now nevertheless, one should consider that the XM4s are arguably the best audiophile-grade earphones with ANC, and as such actually get my performance award. Now I'd be intrigued to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. Would you recommend the XM4s, or would you look at some of the alternatives, specifically given its price tag? Now if you've liked this review, definitely do drop a like, and of course do consider subscribing if you haven't already, and hitting that bell notification. It would be all greatly appreciated. So with that, I'll hopefully see you in the next one. I've been Totally Dubbed, take care of yourselves, and bye bye.